Hey, how y'all doing? Okay, let's do it to it. Let's clear this out. See, if you look at this is our next example. The features two identical positions with one tiny difference. The white C pawn stands on C4, and one is on C2. And the other, oh, okay, I got it. There's another one that we're going to be doing. This is the first one. The first one, we're going to be doing the pawns on C4. This kind of structure would usually favor black because of the holes on these right here, these squares right here for black. It favors black's knight. And it makes the knight very valuable, and black would be delighted to swap a dark squared bishop and rid white of the bishop pair, highlighting the weakness of the dark squares on B4 and D4, and also the spot on C5 here. These would be the weaknesses that would be in the position. Clearly, the position would be very nice for black. And so now we're going to just go back and put in this is if it favors black. Now we're going to look at if it favors white. It's a similar structure, but the only difference is it's the pawn hasn't been pushed in this one here. this is the only difference here. Is the only difference is if the pawn was up here. Now the pawn's back here. Here we have the same position, but this time the c pawn is on c2. Suddenly white has all the chances since the knight can be contained by pawn to c3. Hey, how you doing? Play okay? The knight can be contained by c3. It doesn't have to go to c4. And c3, and it stops the knight from entering into these 2 points here. The pawn does. Using your pawns to deprive the knight of advanced squares is anti-knight strategy, isn't it? Oh, cool. It's good to have you back. So what we're doing here is we're learning how to restrain a knight using anti-knight strategies. So if there's a knight here, let's say you're the one with the 2 bishops. You don't want the knight to come in and cause any chaos. The best square to play is c3. It deprives the knight of its 2 best outposts, or best spots to go to. Yes, c3, knight b3, or knight b4, and knight to d4. And this is what Jeremy Silman talks about, the anti-knight strategies, how you can actually maintain dominate a knight is through your pawns. And so you have to when it comes down to like 2 bishops versus a knight and a bishop, you got to remember that the bishop you have, your opponent doesn't have, but they do have a knight. And so knights are very tricky pieces. They can go on either square, either light or dark squares. And so what you have to do is to stop them, like if it comes down to a bishop versus knight, you're going to have to make it so there's no good outpost for the knight to go to. You will be or should be making use of it often if it comes down to a bishop versus knight endgame. So look at these examples over and over until the knight and the anti-knight strategy idea makes perfect sense to you. Once the concept is burrowed into your brain or your mind, you'll hopefully be less likely to push your pawns forward and blindly give up squares as we used to do before we understood the anti-knight strategy. Because as we know, once you push a pawn, if like the worst thing to do, I've actually seen a game that this has happened before, and I thought to myself, oh no, the player just gave this up here, right here. They gave these 2 wonderful points to the knight. So now black's the one with an advantage here, because there's no way to do an anti-knight maneuver. The knight could actually just slip right on in, and now it's got an outpost forever. Yeah, but the c3 takes away the knight's the 2 spots the knight wants to go to. That's what Jeremy Silman's trying to say, is we have to always think when you push a pawn, remember you can't move that pawn back. You can move a piece back, but you can't move that pawn back. So every time you push a pawn, you give up squares. Like when we pushed our c2 pawn to c3, we gave up these 2 squares. So we gave up these 2 squares when we pushed the pawn. So These this would become an outpost for a knight, but the knight can't get there. That's what Jeremy Soman talks about, is that yes, whole outposts can only be occupied if a piece can actually get there, and they're only a weakness if a piece gets there. That's what Jeremy Soman talks about. Remember, pawns can't move backwards, like we just said. So every time they advance, they lose potential control of squares is lost. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't march pawns up the board. Doing so gains space and often makes pawns a more dynamic part of the process. Just be aware of the downside. That's what he's saying. All right, we're gonna have a Robert Fischer game, or a Bobby Fischer game. Let's do it to. Oops, I think I can. He gives all the, yeah, he gives all the moves. Excellent. So I can just do it. Okay, this is a Robert Fischer. 1 second. Let me make sure. Oops, make sure I got this right. Let me make sure I have the spelling right. Paitigor. Okay. Got it. Okay, perfect. Let's do it to it. The section is called Even the Most Incredible Pawn Moves Can Potentially Weaken a Square. So Bobby Fischer is white and his opponent's black. Knight f3, knight c6. Oh, Roy Lopez. Knight 6. A. He sometimes would play this here, and then play against the weakness of these pawns throughout the game. You could do that because there's no real way you can make a pass pawn. White can. There's really no way you can make a pass pawn when he takes. So he plays actually the Columbus variation of the Roy Lopez. Then he castles. Bishop e7. Rook e1. This covers the pawn. Because beforehand, if black thought about taking here, this is a little trick that you can always set up here. And you have this, and now the bishop has to go there. The queen can double up. Now there's going to be a problem. You can kick. You can't really kick there because of the bishop. So just always be on guard. You can't just grab this, because that comes into play. That attack. And that's now, and that's why the rook had to slide over to protect. He could play if he wanted to. There's d3 that could be played here. You could play d3, support it that way, and also get your bishop out. But remember, every time you move a pawn, you give up squares. So potentially that surrendered this square potentially here. So you have to always be on your tippy toes. Beef ups, rook, and then b5. Let me get a sip of water real quick, and then we'll get started. this is perfectly a reasonable move, which gains queenside space, attacks white's bishop in the main line of the Ruy Lopez. But as good as it is, it does contain some flaws. Quite often, white will hit will hit back with a after the bishop moves a2 to a4 with a capture on b5, which opens up the a file for infiltration. Okay, and also leaves b5 a little bit loose after the trade. The other potential, though rarely seen, is that sometimes black will actually go c5. He'll go pawn c5. This pawn can't be protected anymore if it gets pushed. That leaves the d pawn to basically babysit the whole entire chain. It has to do babysitting duty. On that square, if it dare move to d5 in the later game, c5 suddenly becomes a gaping hole. So like if the c pawn gets pushed here, and then the d pawn somehow ever gets pushed like that. I'm just giving you a hypothetical that the knight could actually jump into c5. There's a gaping hole there for an outpost for the knight. So that's kind of what Jeremy Silma's talking about. And then black castles, c3, and usually the idea is to go d4 and try to smash open the center. Sometimes also c3 has an idea. If the knight were to go to a5 to try to trade off and acquire the two bishops, that allows for bishop to c2. I've actually seen Fabiano play this before, and if you ever try to attack the bishop, you just go to c2 and then you have d4 at that point. So that's kind of the idea behind that. d6 gets played here. h3. That stops the knight from coming into g4 and the bishop. Knight d7. So now the knight's going to try to, you see, this is actually an outpost here for the knight. This is an outpost. So potentially the knight could actually come in here and wedge itself into d3, and that's also a playable idea, and that's why you always have to be careful. Every move you play creates weaknesses. Every pawn move you play. d4, and so Bobby strikes fast because he knows that this would be a really good spot for a knight. So c4 or d4 takes advantage and deprives the knight of its c5 outpost. Still, the knight could go to and then in there if it ever wanted to. So it's not like it doesn't. Even that move has weaknesses because it gives up the c4 square. Knight to b6. Knight bd2. If you notice also, grandmasters and masters know when to keep the tension in the position and when to relieve the tension. And there's no real reason to relieve the tension. Bobby wants to make sure that if a knight ever came to c4, that he could play knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop takes, and basically acquire a pawn. So now black is ready to relieve the pressure by taking. Bobby takes. Now Bobby has really two good pawns that are in the center and can cause a lot of chaos in the position. They play d5 here. Bishop c2. He's not worried even about playing with the isolated pawn. bishop e6. See, the idea is they at any time black could take. It's Josh Waiskins says that the threat is better than the execution. The threat is more intense to your opponent than the execution of the capture. Your opponent has to take into consideration that potentially this pawn capture on e4 is playable. But why force it when black's like, I'll just develop a bishop, and if they take, more power to them. I can actually take with my knight, get a really nice outpost on d5, and be right as rain. Very, very happy, let's just say. Bobby then now shuts down the center. So the center is now all clogged up with pawns. Queen d7, knight b3, and now Bobby is getting ready to bring out his potentially his dark square bishop to hold here, and maybe even dropping in a knight to maybe even dropping in a knight to c5 at the proper moment, and then fortifying it with b5 and a3 and kind of locking everything up. Bishop f5, and then bishop g3, g5 exclam. Bishop, yep, f5 and g5. Because what's the main center pawns for white are on dark squares, right? So Bobby's going to try to trade off his worst bishop for his opponent's best bishop, which is the dark squared, and vice versa. And so, but what'll happen is if everything gets traded off, let's say this bishop gets traded off, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, Bobby has better knights than his opponent. Bobby is actually his knights are much better placed, and he has more outposts to take advantage of. White wants total domination of the c5 square. Since the bishop on e7 was protecting it, white hurries to exchange the bishop off and leaves c5 without any protection. So rook f e8, bishop takes, rook takes, and then probably rook c1. This protects the bishop and develops your last piece. Knight b4. White has an advantage in space in the center. Black has a majority on the queen side, pawn majority. But it is crippled since the c5 pawn, the pawn can't get to c5. It actually is paralyzed. The queen side majority that black has is paralyzed by the d4 pawn. Would simply hang material. On the other hand, white's center and kingside pawn majority is still alive and kicking. If these pawns get moving with f4 to f5, black might as well be overran in the his basically fortress. Black unfortunate condition is caused by the fact that he's saddled with a c pawn and a hole on c5 for the knight to go to. If he cannot find a way to generate some play on his own majority, it's very, very hard to do if your opponent doesn't have any weaknesses to attack. And he'll be in for a long night of suffering from Bobby, basically. Note that c5 is a hole. Black's pawn can't cover c5. c4 isn't. Why? Because c4 isn't a hole for the knight, because Bobby could, if the knight ever went into c4 here, Bobby could just push b3, and the anti-knight maneuver or strategy is there to stop his opponent. But you got to see, even though b5 were played here, it gave up the hole on c5 for the knight. Knight c5, Kerplunk, exclam. Bishop takes. Worse for black is bishop, queen c8, because then bishop takes, queen takes, queen b3, bishop c6, knight takes a6. White has won a pawn, because if rook takes, then you play queen takes b5, and you have a fork of the knight, and so there's no way really to protect. True. I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's right. You're right. That's the better move. Mine's second best, because then you have knight that can come back and guard the rook. But you always have rook takes c7, and now you're in a world of hurt here. So the rook would have to retreat back. You wouldn't be able to take here, because of course you see that's checkmate. So the rook would have to come back. And then you can play a really cool, nice move, rook b7. I think that's an exclam. That deserves an exclam move. That's an interesting continuation. Yeah. It's really interesting. It surely is. Yeah, because you can actually take here, and if the knight were to take, then mate happens. So if you take here, rook takes, and then you take there, and so you're up actually 2 pawns or 3 pawns here. That's really cool move. That's a really cool. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that. Way too much pressure for black. Then Bobby plays another good exclam move. This has a double threat of attacking here and attacking here. Also the knight's attacking the queen. So yeah, wow, kaboom. This is what black missed. White is also better after this move. I was looking at this. Rook takes, queen f5, and then c2, e2. This is good too. But queen d2 gains a lot more than Bobby's opponent thought they acquired. This is a lot more of a forcing of an attack. Queen to d8, and then Kerplunk. Now they have acquired. Bobby's walked into a knight, two knights versus knight and bishop endgame. Okay, we can see the point of white's play. By exchanging his light squared bishop off, which had no influence on c5, for a knight, which eventually challenged that square, white ensured total domination of the c square for the rest of the game, even if black manages to exchange his knight for white's knight on c5. A rook will take place there and actually anchor on the c file as well. White can double or even triple on the c file and go after the c7 pawn. So if by happenstance a bishop gets traded off for a knight, knight gets traded off for this knight, the rook could come in and anchor itself on c5, and then another rook, the other rook could come over to rook e c1, and then the queen can come to c3, and you can take scope on the c7 pawn all day long. What we are seeing is a strategic exchange of minor pieces that's designed to win. An advanced square. Since black's bishop is doomed to remain on light squares, it'll never be able to take part on the battle of c5 for c5. So even though there's a bishop, black has a bishop, the square that really Bobby cares about is the knight on c5. And there's nothing that this light square bishop could do about it. It can't hop over to the dark square and challenge the knight. So a5 gets played to attack the queen. Queen c3. Bishop g6. Bishop f5, it could be playable, but knight h4, and that attacks and potentially wins the bishop. So then the bishop would have to go all the way back home. And then Bobby can go f4, and the idea of playing f5 and then f6 is in the wings, and with a tremendous attack to boot. Not liking it one bit. Would be just bad. White would enjoy marked advance in every sector of the board. He would have a lot of fun all over the board, while black's bishop would be a non-entity in the coming battle on the king side. White dreams of f4, f5, f6, shattering the king's pawn cover, and then also coming down the, hey, how you doing? Also coming down the c file. Hey. So that's kind of what white played, was knight to h5. He'll be able to take this bishop now. A knight on the rim is not always grim. This is a good move that frees the f pawn, and also eyes f5 to push f5 squared. It's important because white would eventually like to push f4, f5, f6. So knight a4 to attack the queen. Queen b3. This holds on onto the b pawn because the knight wants to go there. It's really the only square to hold onto the b pawn. Fischer doesn't want to give black even a feeling of counterplay. Indeed, if you can keep your opponent passively placed and wait for the axe to fall, then it usually is a good idea to do so. So basically what you're doing is you're slowly but steadily slowly but steadily um, about to bring the axe down and basically cut whatever's in its path. Nevertheless, there's also there's this here that could be played, but I'm not sure about if you take here, you take there. I'm not sure if this is enough compensation for so like what would happen is uh, so knight takes, I made a mistake there. Knight takes here, this is the problem. I had the wrong takes. And then queen a3, this attacks the pawn. At this point, rook b8 is a strong move. Okay, and so that's kind of the idea, that you're giving up this pawn for counterplay, but Bobby Fischer would not have really even gone down that road. So he would have kept with this move here after knight takes. Let me see here. What are we? Knight takes c5. Oh, right here. Oh. Okay, then rook takes, and now what we have discussed is he'll play c6. Well, that's really odd. I wonder why Bobby didn't take that. I guess he could take it any time he wants. Why not just double up, right? Rook e6, and then Bobby is ready to set up. That is really strange. Why would he? That is weird. Why? He's hanging his knight, isn't he? Yeah. I'm just trying to figure this out. He's actually hanging his knight. That's peculiar. Maybe did I miss a move somewhere? Hold on, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Queen d2. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Yikes. I did miss a move. I did miss a move. I knew I missed something here. Let me see. It's on move 20. It's B takes. After that, let's see. Hold on, let me see. What did I? Oh, okay. Wrong. It was this move here. E8. I knew there was something that I had priorly missed wrong. There we go. It wasn't D. And then here we go. B4. Got it. Now A5. This makes more sense because Bobby would not have hung a piece. If you ever kind of get concerned that, yeah. Yeah, then knight to A5, queen B3. There we go. Now we're on the right track. We're on the right track again. Knight takes, rook takes. There we go. Now C6. This makes more sense because the queen now guards the pawn. I knew there was something amiss. And then E6. Then now F4. Here we go. Now we're cooking. And then F5. There's nobody wants really a tall pawn. Remember we talked about tall pawn is when a bishop is basically trapped or entombed inside the pawns. That's considered a tall pawn. Potentially you can play bishop e4 and then f5, h4 or h6, and then f6 here. This is crushing. Rook c8, queen g3, g6, and then knight to f3. Rook h6, and then knight e2, d2 I mean. Okay, if we go back to move 29 here, instead of bringing the rook over to here, we're going to take a look at knight takes on h4. Queen g3 just wins on the spot because now what you're doing is you're threatening mate. Oops. You're threatening mate and you're threatening the rook. And so there's really no way to handle both threats. If you play here, you play there. If you play here, you play there. So it's like that. You have to always watch out for that. So that was that kind of idea. Okay, let's see, what did we... Okay, a4. And now we get to see, remember what we talked about? Eventually we can slap in a4 on that. There it is. Turning black's queenside into a mess. Queen c2 doesn't work very well because it's, well, actually it's more straightforward. It's more straightforward. It deals with the threat of going after the pawn here, but then a rook could just come in there, and I don't know if we really have any compensation. Potentially you could win a pawn here if takes. You can win a pawn maybe. So there's something like that. Or if you wanted to win this pawn, you can go that way. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. What about the bishop on g6? Yeah. Then b takes c. There's also, they were talking about b4, and then queen c, c2 with the same type of idea of winning material. Queen takes a4. Oh, that is funny. Okay, we'll look at that. Okay, well, we'll do 6. But let's see what time we have right now. Oh yeah, we can finish this up and then do 6 before I have to log off. So we'll do this game here. This is was a little bit longer of one, but I'm glad we went over it because it's really helpful to learn about anti-knight strategies. So now the knight has to take, so because the queen's attacking there, and then rook takes c, so that just surrendered a pawn. And queen h4 to go after this pawn. Rotates g6 was actually a mistake. I can't believe Bobby. Did Bobby play that? Is that Bobby? This has always been accepted as being decisive, but it turns out to be based on a tactical misconcept. King h7 was actually played here, but they're saying that the best continuation for white was actually, surprisingly, let me see, what did I... Oh, queen d6 is actually best. This is actually the best continuation. They must have put it into an engine and found out. I didn't think this was the best continuation. I always thought that because of rook d8 that there was a problem there. Queen c7. and then king h7, e6, and then f4 is defended and the pawn's going to come up the board. So how are you supposed to actually win? White wins in this. Okay, I understand. I appreciate the offer, but nah. So he plays h7. There's one other line. If queen takes f4, there's queen e7, queen c1, check, king h2, queen f4, check, rook g3, queen h6, and then e6 is an exclam move, because now you're threatening to check here and push the pawn all the way up the board. Rook takes b2, queen f7, like what we were talking about, king h7, f, and then there, rook takes check, queen takes, queen h5, check, queen h6, and then queen to e8, check. I know, I don't know what that is. Surprisingly, queen g5, Bobby played queen g5, and this was a double question mark blunder. This was actually a blunder. The other person blundered here too with rook b4 was another blunder. A better continuation would be actually, instead of this, queen g3. What in the world? Queen g3. Queen takes g3, rook takes g3, rook b, and then rook a3, queen b, cancel, queen b4, rook takes a, rook takes, and then g3 to fortify the whole wall. So that is kind of an interesting continuation. Yeah. Both players and all the annotators until the present have considered Black's position to be resignable. However, he can force a miracle draw with this one move here. Queen takes f4 exclam. This is the miracle draw right here. Hold on, I gotta get a drink of tea. Okay, the miracle draw is right here. Hold on. Let me we'll get the miracle draw on. Just one sec. Queen e7, Rook G8. Exclam again. It's amazing how this actually will hold. I was shocked when I saw it. Rook G5. King G6. Rook H4. Queen E3. Check. King H. And then Rook to H8. Exclam. Double exclam. And surprisingly, if you take here, there's a check. King G1. There's C1 check. If you try checking here, and then you come back and you have this happen all over again. If you try coming up the board, you risk actually getting checkmated. This, if you come here and then you come there, that's actually almost mate. You'd have to play here, and now that is checkmate. So you actually, that's the miracle draw that they were talking about, a perpetual check. It's amazing. That is a totally an amazing move. Rook H8 on the last one saves the entire day. Okay, Queen. You're right. Queen F3 is winning here. King H and then G3. Exclam. You're right on that. Queen takes. And then Queen takes D5. And there's no need to see anymore, but if you wanted to, Rook takes here, Queen E6, King H7, Queen G6 check, King G8, and then mate. Yep. Okay. We'll stop right here and we'll pick up and we'll do 6, I promise, 6 puzzles. So I'll pull up another tab so I don't lose this. Make sure I keep this on and mate and twos. Okay. That's funny. I don't put the kings because then it would give you would be able to solve it. I know you guys would solve it. So I'm going to leave the kings off the board just for a second so that I can get all the minor pieces set up first. This is actually black to mate in 2. Let me make sure I have this right. I set it for black. We're a team. Hey, it's all about the team and the friends you keep that will help you constantly getting better. That's what the Lord always says. Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, just the king and we're ready to go. Okay, get ready, set, go. Okay, black to move mate in 2. Black to move mate 2. Yep, knight c4. King, let's see. Bishop takes, and then queen yep. Yeah, but remember, it's you have to play knight, bishop, and there. You forgot one move continuation. Okay, I'll do mate 2 for black. Okay. There we go. Just hold on there, and then I'll copy that really fast. Copy. Perfect. Okay. Let me get this board cleared. We'll do one. We'll do. We have 5 more. Good job. Play okay. Nice work. That was excellent spotting that. Oops, I have to move it over here. See, right there, there. Let's get the pawn set up for black. Okay. Oops, forgot a pawn there. Oops, rook has to come over here. Bishop, let's see, 2 rooks. One there, one there. A knight, a bishop, a queen. Where's the king? King. Okay. Okay. Alright, get ready. Oops, I have to make it so it's black to move. Let's see, I just want to make sure I have everything set up right, otherwise it may not work. Perfect. Ready, get set, go. There you go. Okay. So be ready. Be ready to get ready, team. Oops. There we go. That was a tie. Tie. Yeah. There we go. 2-2. Nice work. Okay. Get ready. Get set. And go. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, because that doesn't work. Rotates me. Yep. So close. You guys almost had it. Okay, board editor. Come on. There we go. You got two more to for this. Two more. Excuse me. We got this. There we go. Do 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 do. Okay, black to move. Get ready. Get set. Go. There you go. You got it. Play. Okay, nice. Nice. See here, here, and there. Kaboom. Last round. Final round. Overtime. Overtime round. This is like in basketball when it comes down to you got 3 minutes on the clock. Or football, whoever scores next wins. Okay, alright. Well, okay, I'll flip the board. But I have to set up first, then I'll flip it. Let's see. We gotta get it to black to move. Flip the board. Perfect. Ready, set, last round. Oh, hold on. Let me flip the board. This actually, the reason this works, play okay, is because it draws the king away. Hey, we're all winners. We'll call this a tie. Because, you know what? As long as we learn, that's all that matters. That's the whole thing about learning. You're always getting better by learning. So, alrighty, yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to say adieu now on this one. Yes, there we go. Liking it. Okay. Thank you all for logging on, participating, and you know what? What we learned today from Bobby Fischer's game is anti-knight strategy, and how you got to be careful when you push your pawns, because once you push the pawns, the game is you leave squares behind, and the knight could actually take the squares and occupy them as outposts. But remember always to that what the Lord Jesus says, you have to receive Him as Lord and Savior of your life. It's important. We all one day have to decide what we're going to do with the Lord Jesus Christ. So we have to decide. It's one of those things. I always think about when Yaz or Jennifer and Maury says that there's a 2 result in a chess game. There's a draw or a win. In this situation, it's a 2 result. There's a win or a loss. So we have to make the right decision. Or on like Indiana Jones, it says choose wisely. Truly, that's the same type of situation. But remember what Bruce Lee says: take what you know and apply it, and be willing to do something with it. And remember, treasure your victories and learn from your losses. And remember that mistakes do not define who you are and how you act. It defines learning is what defines who you are and how you act. Because with mistakes, you get to learn. And I know mistakes aren't fun, but in the end, you get to learn something altogether new. And as long as it's at a small cost, it's really rewarding to be able to take that and share it with others. And that's what the Team Chess Cruncher motto is all about: of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus. As I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening. And Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow, and we'll keep pushing forward and learning and having fun and improving and learning more about anti-knight strategies. Remember what Hannibal Smith said? He said that even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. So even when a board looks random, my friends, there's always a plan there. Just be patient. If you have to get up, walk around, and then come sit back down, there's always a plan there. Just calm yourself down and see it. Because there is no randomness. There is no randomness. Everything has a plan in it. So never think that stuff is random. Okay, 2 thumbs up, hoorah. Great job, team, on participating in the puzzles, and keep learning and improving and getting better. And that's what it's all about, honoring the Lord Jesus with the gifts that He's given you and receive Him as Lord and Savior. Okay, 2 thumbs up, hoorah, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, team. Be blessed. Bye-bye. Hoorah.